when someone introduces the person to us that is already in our network, sometimes you can skip a lot of the diligence of the fact that you haven't known this person for very long. And in fact, a lot of times you've only known this person for a few days. Founders will feel that it's probably better for them to start with investors that they already know and trust.
Maurice Russo is an investor
focused on backing world-class founders who are building fast growth companies.
People can ride the wave of, I've had a string of bad luck for too long. At some point, it starts to become statistically relevant, where it's like, now it's no longer luck, now you are just not winning.
Is there anything specific that you've seen in cold emails which is either really terrible or really great?
Look, I think investors want...
Hey there, my name's Alfie Whattam. Welcome to the Decoded podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you click the follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching this, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Maurice, we did a podcast a couple of weeks ago and it was great. We scratched the surface of advice for founders, investors, VCs, everything in between. But whilst I'm here in New York, I wanted to do a part two. Let's go deeper. Let's really attack some of these topics and add a ton of value for entrepreneurs, people raising, people building, people listening to this today. So just context, you're an investor at Lura Hippo, which has backed DocSend and Warby Parker, Allbirds, some like incredibly successful companies. So when you're being pitched, when you're speaking to founders, what are you looking for when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
Well, welcome to the City of Dreams, first of all.
I love it here. Yes.
It's good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, what we look for is what we think is tripling down on the best talent building in a market that we think is able to reach venture scale. And I think our thesis is tripling down on that as much as possible. So we get less interested in building elaborate theses. And I have friends at other firms who are also very successful that do a little bit more of a top-down approach where they will take a bird's eye view at a market and kind of identify a lot of the pain points and holes there and go find the founders that are solving the problems in the way that fits their thesis. Whereas we're a little bit more bottoms up, right? We might have some pre-existing theses, but we'll actually approach it much more founder driven. And if we think somebody's really excellent and has the right team around them, that they can actually change our minds on our thesis in a market. And so far it's worked pretty well, but it's also the nature of the industry that we will get a lot wrong, and we will pass on a lot of founders that turns out we're that top tier talent, and we'll invest and make mistakes as well.
Yes, I mean, that's all part of the game. Like, in order to get the unicorn, in order to get the one that returns the fund, you just statistically need to go through a lot that don't quite make it, and that's just what it is. But when you're doing the approach that you're looking at, the odds are definitely more skewed in your favor rather than going for more of a spray and pray approach. You know, if you can spend more time with the founders and help them shape the product and the go-to-market and the strategy, it's much more of a higher success ratio metric when it's done correctly most of the time. The approach of like, hey, here's a TAM that we want to go after, let's back 5 of the same company doing it. It works, especially with accelerators, but it's definitely a different approach, isn't it, to the one that you tend to focus on?
Well, and it's also partially something that starts to get borderline from a fund construction perspective, because of course you can't back 2 companies that either are currently competitors or will inevitably become competitors. That said, there are some markets that I can think of off the top of my head where if you could invest across multiple venture-backed companies in those spaces, you'll probably do pretty well.
Yes.
So yes, I do think that there are ways in which you can still diversify across a space and potentially be successful. But I think to your point about spending time and really doing that diligence, we will spend as much time trying to figure out whether we think we're speaking with a founding team that's smarter than us, and than we will on a market. I will say that there has been changes in the last few years on a third variable, which is the fact that defensibility has become harder to attain, and therefore moat is also harder. And so there will be times where there are elite teams building potentially really great companies, but in a time where it's harder than ever to stay ahead. And so I think I can certainly look back and notice that I've had times where I've had to end up passing on a truly elite team, partially because it was still hard to figure out how we really pick the category winner in something.
Yes.
So that was probably a newer third variable that we would add into it.
So when these founders are approaching you, I mean, look, these conversations and these pitches, they happen in a multiple, different strategy of different ways. Like some people are completely cold emailing you or inbounding you on LinkedIn. You must get a ton of these. I mean, I get a ton of these as an angel. Some people are getting referrals and warm connections, and some people are doing more creative strategies to try and get in front of you. I feel like the warm intro test certainly has some validity because it's almost like the first test of a founder. Like, can you network your way to a warm introduction? And if you can't do that, then there are potentially questions around your ability to then get in front of the right customers or partners or future, investors. So I understand why a lot of investors have that as table stakes a lot of the time. But there are certainly people that could send you like a killer cold email and get in front of you, right? So what's your approach on advice for founders on how to, I guess, just get in front of a VC? Like, forget the pitch. How do they get the pitch to begin with?
This is a very important question, and I'm actually glad you're bringing it up. So I actually respond to all cold emails directed at me.
Okay.
That said, before there is a comment from somebody saying, well, you didn't respond to me, there is a caveat to this. It is easier than ever today to send automated emails, right? And so it's hard to tell sometimes, is somebody really trying to get in touch with me specifically for a specific reason that relates to my experience or what my firm does, or is it something that's part of a just batch of emails or LinkedIn requests being sent to every investor? And now there probably have been times where I will miss an email or miss a LinkedIn message that was targeted at me, but it was because I couldn't quite tell based off of the email whether this was something actually targeted towards me or whether it was used as a way of just reaching out to everyone.
Yes.
But I can think of an example right now of a healthcare founder that I just chatted with who was actually very, very strong. And he reached out to me specifically because he said, hey, Maurice, I know that previously you worked at HealthWorks, which is the corporate venture arm of an insurance plan. And I'm actually building in health tech, targeting insurance payers down the line. And I imagine that work is still following you at Lair Hippo. And of course, I responded. In fact, we chatted the next day because it was a very clear intention behind that email. Now, going into a different topic, which is the fact that there have been many top firms that have talked about how they've only invested in either a handful or sometimes even none deals that were sent cold. And it's hard to say. There's different perspectives on this because I think some views that I've heard are, it's not that we need somebody to vouch for them in order for us to get excited, but more that the type of founders that we want to back will know how to leverage their networks and find a way to get to you. But part of the reason that I don't relate to that is because I found that my job is actually not that different than the founder's job in terms of getting connected a lot of times. Like a lot of times I'm chasing what I hope are great founders just as often as they're trying to chase me. If not more in some cases. So it's not that I would think that a cold email should come any less respected, but what I will say is that there are times where you realize that because the diligence process for us sometimes can take a week, right? There are times where we've had to write a term sheet up in 5-6 days. When someone introduces the person to us that is already in our network, what happens is sometimes you can skip a lot of the diligence of the fact that you haven't known this person for very long. And in fact, a lot of times you've only known this person for a few days. And so you might think you have a good read on them. But if somebody in our portfolio, for example, introduces this other founder to us and says, this person was really excellent where we worked together at our last startup or anything along those lines, that signal is important because it's told to you by somebody that you already trust and can just speak for their experience in a way that a few days of having conversations is not always so easy to gather. So I think that's why sometimes the warm introduction is still the better way to go. But what I would also argue is there are times where I get a warm introduction to a founder, and if the person who's introducing me is not somebody that I know particularly well, or is not somebody that whose judgment I really trust based off of our relationship in terms of what is the type of startup that we tend to invest in very much, I'd say a cold email is just as valuable, right? So it can go in many different directions, but it is a very important topic because I try to hold myself to a standard where I will respond if I feel like someone really reached out to me. I am also very bad with email and LinkedIn management because of, to your point, I do get quite a bit on a daily basis. So, but the intentions are good. I can promise that.
Yes. I mean, like, I have always gone the warm approach as far as I can remember because I just have a good network from my podcast and events that I've spoken at and attended and that sort of thing, which kind of opens up a good point. Like if you're like moving to SF or New York or London and you don't have a network there, a good place to start is just like go on Luma and like find all the founder and investor events. Like if you network like crazy for 3 months, you will have built some good relationships that you can then leverage to get introductions from. So this concept that I have to do cold email because I don't know anyone, well then meet people.
Right.
Like you can fix that. That is a problem that you can solve.
I totally agree. And also there is extra gear that you get to tap into when you go to a happy hour event and get to meet somebody in a non-fundraising type of situation. I do find this is anecdotal, not always true, but I will say I find that sometimes if I'm at a work event and I start getting the elevator pitch a little bit too fast into a conversation, that tells me that I'm meeting somebody who's really just looking for investments and not really looking to.
Yeah, don't do that. Like,
right.
Yeah, build the relationship, add value, add trust, and then if you need to raise, do that like later. Get like the trust there first.
I agree, and part of the reason for it is, and this goes for both sides, and I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
But there will always be, whether it's false or not, a sense of FOMO, both on the investor side and the founder side, right? And so, as investors, there is no doubt that when I look at across our portfolio, sometimes the times that we've gotten the most excited about getting into a company as an investor is when the company has been a proprietary source where we feel like we got a really unique look because we already had a relationship with that person, right? And I think the founder will also feel that way towards investors, right? So I think if an investor who has no direct network or correlation with a certain founder reaches out, a lot of times founders will feel that it's probably better for them to start with investors that they already know and trust or have been connected to through friends of theirs and can come with a vetted source. So for that reason, when you meet somebody that immediately starts pitching you, you start to notice this person may have already had to skip the part of going into the investors that they trust well.
Yes.
So I do think for a million reasons on both sides of the aisle, focusing on building relationships first is just so critical. And not just because of the fact that you might be working together from an investment perspective, but even if you don't, I think on both sides, the founder can still be very helpful to the investor and the investors can still be very helpful to the founder. Yeah. And there's always another company. There's always another reason to stay in the same ecosystem usually.
Yes, no, certainly. When we did our pre-seed and we got term sheet that we were happy with, it was from somebody that I had a pretty good relationship with, and that certainly was like the large reason why we went with them, because we vibed with them. And there were other firms who had offered us capital, even at a slightly higher valuation, but I didn't know these people. Like a week ago, I had no idea who they were. I'd never really vibed with them. It was a bit of a cold conversation. So it's not just about what looks best on paper. It's really like people will make decisions based on logic, but then they'll follow them up with emotion and then like actually close them if it feels right, not just in their head, but their heart as well. So like you need to win their heart first before you can win their mind. And the way to do that is just by building a relationship at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally agree. And there's also part of what comes with building that relationship is also understanding who will actually add to your business, right?
Yes,
And hopefully through that relationship building, you'll get an understanding of that, because I've met many founders who say it is not worth taking an investment from somebody who ends up not being the right investor for a bunch of reasons, and instead of potentially just passing up on the raise altogether.
Yes. Most VCs, most investors, the truth is they will probably, apart from the capital, they will have a little, very small impact on the business itself. You'll get some incredible ones that are great with strategy and advice and giving you advice, and as the founder, leaving you alone to make the decision, but being there to help make the introductions to the customers, the investors, the founders, or whoever. And then you have some terrible investors, which most of the time they're trying to be helpful, but they're just doing it the wrong way, right? And like one of those can ruin a lot of things for you. So like it's better to have a lot of people that are just a net like neutral zero, rather than having like one person that's like that. If you get somebody who's a killer who can really help you, fantastic. Very hard to find in my experience.
Yeah, I will say that I haven't been doing investing long enough to see too many examples of where this has actually manifested and gone wrong. But what I will say is it is important as an investor to understand your role, right? And there are times where, for example, with my background in poker, if I end up working with a company building in and around the poker space, I think hopefully I'll have quite a bit to add to that conversation. But there's another founder who I consider a very, very close friend of mine that I angel invested in, and she is building in a space that I have less experience with. And so I've tried at least to know my role there, which is a lot more of being the supportive angel investor that is not going to step in and tell her how to run her business better than she does, and so on and so forth. But the role there has also hopefully just been being a friend. And sometimes that is the best way an investor can come in, depending on the type of company you're working with, the type of background you have, and so on. But I do find that the investors that I always hear about that have the best reputations are able to adapt in their roles and how they work with companies quite a bit.
That supportive friend mode is so underestimated, how important it is. Like when you're sending out your monthly investor email update, and 99% of people will skim read it and then just don't reply, and that's cool, it's fine. But if you just get like a well done smiley face, like you would be surprised how important that is to people that are working 996 and building like crazy, and they just get like an acknowledgement, even if it's a thumbs up emoji. You'd be shocked. So like if you are an angel or a VC, it's something to keep in mind. Like a little bit of affirmation can go a lot longer and a lot further than you expect it to be.
And on the contrary, if you are doing the opposite and writing way too much in response, that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah. This is a quick message to tell you about my company, Alpha AI. We built Lisa, the world's first AI recruiter who finds candidates for you on autopilot. Visit welovealpha.com now to learn how it works, or click the link below in the description. And now, back to the episode. The actual structure of the cold email itself, I mean, like, let's close on this topic. There are a couple of other things I'd love to get to, but if somebody doesn't have that warm intro, they haven't done the networking, and they are reaching out completely cold, in terms of like the structure of an email which actually gets the result that they want, which is a meeting, right? What would a good email look like? Like if I was sending these out, I'd go something along the lines of hi, first name, a personalized one sentence about that person. That might be something I've heard them say on a podcast. It might be, referencing a company they've recently backed and how we're in a similar space. But it has to be personalized. It has to feel like it's not mass sent, which the AI tools are getting, as you said, they're getting better and better at doing. And right now I'd use them as a co-pilot rather than a direct replacement for that. I do like a little check before it goes out. And then I probably do like a sentence about my business, a link to the doc send, the opportunity, and then the call to action, like, can we have a meeting to discuss? Would that be a similar format that you would follow, that you would be receptive to? Is there anything specific that you've seen in cold emails which is either really terrible or really great? Like, what's your view on like the actual structure and the content within the copy?
I'll start with that part.
Okay.
But then I want to make sure we get to the AI part, because I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had there.
Yes, definitely.
On how to write the cold email. Look, I think investors want to get a sense that there's a reason why they're seeing something, right? Because it's very competitive right now. There are a lot of VC firms, there's a lot of money, and investors want to feel like they are being reached out to somebody that is not just reaching out to them because they want to talk to every investor and give themselves the best chance at raising a round, but rather they're getting reached out to by somebody who probably is very strong and actually has access to a network of investors, but has specifically tried to get in contact with that specific investor because of something in their background. And to your point, a portfolio company that they specifically backed, something that they said in a podcast that really resonated with them. And as a result, that creates alpha, right? Yes. No pun intended. But I think that that sense of understanding why you are the right person to be seeing something is important. And so I don't think you'll see some emails where it's like, give me the chance to show you why I'm the hardest worker in the world and so on. Look, I'm not saying that there aren't cases where those founders are probably correct, and maybe we are missing something if we don't read that email or respond to that email. Yeah. But it's never going to be sold in writing, I don't think, at least in our world, right? There are definitely sales experts out there that would tell you that in their industries, there is probably a perfect way to really sell something through writing where you capture the attention of the person really well. But I think in our world, it's harder. It's harder to say there's the optimal thing to write, but the more that you include something on the context of why you are the right person to talk to for them and vice versa, I think that's really important.
AI component. Yeah, this is what I'm super fascinated by. Like we send thousands of AI generated emails a day to candidates, to customers and beyond. And like when you do it properly, it can convert better than a human could possibly do. But you're doing it at scale, significantly cheaper, significantly faster. It can ultimately also backfire. And I'd say most AI emails that are sent are terrible. Like, you probably just shouldn't have sent it to begin with. It's probably doing you more harm than good. But if you can figure out a way to make it work, which is not easy, then it can be like a superpower that you have. But
I totally agree. I think we're heading towards a world in which everyone will have at least one, if not multiple, AI agents for themselves, right? I don't think that's a particularly unique perspective. Where it will get interesting, though, on an outbound perspective, whether for sales, whether for VC and founders, and so on and so forth, is where the agents can actually communicate with each other and understand if there's a mutual fit in advance and just save everybody so much time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so to my point about getting cold inbounds from founders that have referenced my previous background, either in poker or in healthcare or you name it, and how that relates to why they're reaching out to me, I wouldn't care if that's an AI agent doing it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Because if the AI agent knows that there is something about their company that specifically is relevant to my background and therefore will create a great conversation, right? Great. So, I'm very good friends with a founder that is building in poker, right? Awesome. I wouldn't really care if he told me after the fact, hey, I actually got in contact with you through an AI agent, but the AI agent realized that you played professional poker and therefore I need to chat. I think that's great.
As long as it's genuine, as long as it actually ties back, as long as they're not making it up and it's just hallucinating and it's just going off and just like it has to actually tie back to reality. But like, I'd almost prefer a founder leveraging cutting edge technology to get in touch with me, because it shows they're smart if they're doing it properly.
Absolutely, and I think this can go into so many different areas. I mean, there's a fascinating company that we just chatted with in dating, right? Where in theory the AI agent will actually be able to understand what you want better than what you currently think is what you want.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if we're there yet. With different spaces, but I know that we will get to that place. And I think an easy example of this is, as successful as apps like Hinge have been in the dating world so far, it is true that a large part of it has been dependent on first impression on a physical presence, and then a little bit on just kind of location and some other things like that. But one thing that I found, as somebody just got engaged, by the way, is the fact that I'm very type B and my fiance is very type A, and maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen that when my friends using dating apps of just like real personality types. And imagine that there's an AI agent that has conversations with you, and even if hopefully that data is still very secure, but because it understands you, it can actually find you a perfect match based off of the other AI agents speaking with other potential people that you want to date. And again, reach a point where, because the agent knows the person a lot better than you will by scrolling, actually create a really custom match for you. I think that's a fascinating use case, and this can apply, again, to founders and investors, and to, frankly, in the world of sales and product and customer.
I think the my agent will speak to your agent thing is going to happen right across the scale of basically every area. Like, why would I call up a dentist's office manually, speak to a receptionist, go back and forth on times and book it in, when, like, today the tech works to do that, but better, more accurately, faster, cheaper, smarter, that infinitely can be scaled through AWS and OpenAI credits with no humans needing to be trained and onboarded, and then you have to worry about annual leave or them getting sick and all the problems that come with our human bodies, right?
No, I mean, all of the efficiency stuff is no-brainers. I think we've already started to feel the use case, and I mean,
but it's not here yet. So it's a case of, like, finding these founders, as you said, hearing to their stories and their thesis and how they're going to attack this, and then just giving them the capital, the resources, and the power to go out there and change the world. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and it will happen like 6 to 12 months from now. We will be living in a very, very different world, and the exponential growth is getting faster and faster and faster, to the point where more is starting to happen in a day, in a week, than used to happen in a month and a year. And it's just going to continue to get to that point, which is a very exciting time to be alive in our world.
Open your eyes and ears, because this is going to be a fun ride.
Yes,
no doubt.
What's, like, the biggest lie that founders tell you when they're pitching? It might be a lie that they're telling themselves. But oftentimes, like, our biggest enemy is us, and we're just not objective. We get sucked into beliefs that we have that might not be fully accurate, and then we make decisions based on assumptions that we have from our past. Like, what's something that founders often tell you, and you just kind of sit back and think, like, is that real? It's
a generalization.
Yeah.
But I think the more often that I hear had X happened, or
I get that all the time.
or if we can raise X amount, actually this will happen. Not that it's not necessarily true, but we get updates, right? And most of the time we start to realize that when there's too much of if and buts and had this, a lot of times the founder may not see it the way that we see it, from a little bit more of a just like outsider's perspective. That said, I can also think of many cases where a founder's had a healthy amount of delusion, and maybe that's what pushed them to get to venture scale and be sitting on a beach in some fancy location. I don't know.
Everyone's delusional until they win, and then they're a genius, right? Like, that's how it works. But that's a really good point, because it's a difference between relying on what you can control and having high agency versus blaming something external. Like
Right.
we haven't had we haven't hit 1 million ARR yet because this element doesn't work, or OpenAI did this, which means that we can't, now do this feature. Whatever the reason is, if you're blaming something or somebody else, it might be valid, it might be the truth, but you can't change it. So like refocus the energy on what you can do, and then you take ownership, you have responsibility, and you'll actually drive and make things happen. If you're constantly waiting on somebody else to do something, like your success is in somebody else's hands, and that's not where you need to be if you're a founder.
Yeah, and I think one thing that can happen, and again, from an outsider's perspective, is the fact that as a former poker player and tournament poker player, right, the world of tournaments, you're only making money in about 1 out of every 5, even if you're one of the best players in the world. But the key is that when you do make the money, that you can really capitalize on some of those opportunities. But 4 out of 5 times, something will go wrong, even if you are the best player at the table, right? And I think sometimes the founder journey and just life in general can work that way, where sometimes one thing does go wrong, right? But maybe one lie that I would identify is the fact that sometimes what happens is, even if something did go wrong, founders will maybe hang on to it a little bit too long. And instead of realizing that like there is a learning there, we can move on, and eventually something will strike and we will go in the right direction. But that if it doesn't, then there is also a learning there, right? And I think one thing that a lot of poker players have been around for years, that happens is because there is variance in results in the short term, but not in the long term. People can ride the wave of, I've had a string of bad luck for too long, right? And then at some point it starts to become statistically relevant, where it's like, now it's no longer luck, now you are just not winning.
Yes.
Right? And again, I think most founders are still not in a place where they're forced to lie to themselves or to others too often, but there is this fallacy that sometimes can kick in, and it's just about whether you find the level of delusion that's a little bit healthy because you need to dream big, versus is something just not working and we need to fail faster, right? And I think this is one thing at Lair Hippo we talk about a lot internally is we always find that when we onboard portfolio companies, that we always give one piece of advice about the outcome, and they said obviously the best possible outcome here is you do great, you have a big exit, we're all happy, we all celebrate, right? But the second best result that we can have here is you fail, but you fail fast, right? And you fail fast, you either sell the company if you can, or it's a total zero, but then you start another company and we work together again and we try again and we take the learnings that you've learned, right? But the worst possible, like number 3 on that list, is that you start your company and it kind of takes a long time and it kind of just drags on, and maybe you're still growing a little bit, but you're not really reaching kind of the original goal that you would hope to reach, and it gets a little bit sloggy both for the investors and the founders, right? And had they maybe just made this choice to either pivot or start another company or something faster, I think it actually ends up a more successful outcome for everybody involved.
Yes, I mean it's so hard to know when to pivot versus when to just keep iterating and making small changes. Like, and there's no like book or rule about this stuff, right? like if you're going after a market, 6-12 months, constantly changing the product, and you don't have any really real signs of product market fit, and your burn is eating you, then you probably should maybe pivot. But then there are people that take the complete opposite view and they say like, this is what the investors backed, like let's do it until death. And
this is this is a very, very hard situation to find yourself in as a founder. There is no doubt about that. I very much understand. But I remember we talked to like a 22-year-old kid who had actually been a second-time founder. Okay. Wow. And for his first company,
starting early.
Yes, definitely. And he raised, I think, $3 million for his first company and returned the money to investors because he realized that his thesis was not going to work out. And we said to ourselves, for a 20-year-old, that is
it's very mature.
Very mature and very impressive. no coincidence that for the second company that kid ended up raising at some crazy valuation and
Yeah.
described
When you're writing your next check, let me know. I'm in.
We certainly
yeah.
could not win that deal.
Yeah.
But it is objectively still a very hard part of pressure and working with a lot of my portfolio companies and just founders that I'm friends with, knowing the pressures that you face of investors that are betting on a certain vision, and sometimes that vision doesn't always align, especially at pre-seed and seed. Can be a hard thing to realize, but usually in the end, the best piece of advice is always like the investors are on the same team as you, and if hopefully you're working with investors that have seen failure more than once or twice, and so if something has to pivot or something has to change or someone has to get fired, hopefully we'll be on board.
Yeah, certainly. They can guide you, they can advise you, and there's so much that you know as a second or third time founder which you just didn't even like scratch the surface on as a first time founder, and it's really insane. Like one of the benefits of having a VC is like even if they haven't like co-founded the actual company itself, if they've helped incubate it and been there like from the start, like they have, and they've done it with a lot of different companies, like oh my god, they have a very unique perspective which you would be crazy not to tap into. And if a VC has done this for a long time across multiple cycles and waves and different, like there are trends, there are things that they pick up which as a 22-year-old you would just have no idea where to begin with, basically.
Definitely. And I think that oftentimes is the part of experience that can be most valuable from a VC to a founder, even if they have built their own company. But of course, I mean, investors that have built their own companies will have that kind of unique perspective as well. But there also are times where I hear stories of boardrooms where there's an investor who's built their own company, and especially if they have their own ego, then there's an investor that hasn't been their own company, and a little bit of clashing because the person that's built a company thinks that they should have a more unfair perspective because they've actually been in the founder's shoes before, and then maybe the investor that hasn't still feels like they have something to contribute, and you know, it's a hard it's a hard thing to talk about. But what I can tell you is, if you just look at history, there have been certainly investors that have been successful, both that have been founders and that have not been founders.
Yeah, even without the like the founder market fit per se, because there's certainly lessons which can be applied to various verticals outside of just the domain expertise, which is kind of interesting. Curious like how you approach that, because if you're not doing like market driven thesis investing and it's much more like founder vision backed, how do you build conviction in a market where perhaps you've never worked before or you have no idea about it? Like, are you just relying on the founder to their storytelling to be so good that they convince you like this is the space? Because like you need the right founding team, like Tick. You need a TAM which is big enough, Tick, and then you need to be directionally correct. And like the TAM and the directionally correct part, like if you don't know that space, I only invest in stuff which I have it's in my wheelhouse. It's in AI. It's in I would probably struggle outside of that. Unless it was like my job and I was like, and I was a VC, but as an angel, I maybe it's a limiting belief I have, but that's just the path that I stick with. But from your perspective, when there's so many different companies in the portfolio, how are you getting the conviction to determine which markets are big enough and directionally correct? Easy question.
The grand question. I've never heard. I don't know if I've heard a harder question to answer properly.
Sorry.
Because there is no good answer. I think, again, we try to go back to the basics, which is how do we identify that we have met somebody who is a true category expert and feels like somebody who has the real right to win over anybody else, right? And then as part of the market research, we do due diligence by calling people in our network that are experts in that space, right? And that is the advantage of being a generalist fund that has been around for now nine funds. We have made a lot of investments. We have worked with a lot of different founders in a lot of different spaces. And that starts to compile over time. And we can always reference a lot of those founders in our portfolio as forms of diligence, but then also as ways, especially when we tap a founder in our portfolio who's had a particularly successful run, it can also be a nice introduction to make for the founder that we're currently chatting with, because hopefully they get excited to meet somebody who's built in that space and who's been successful, or maybe they've been meaning to meet this person. And so it becomes a dual ability to hopefully add a little bit of value in the meantime to the founder that we're chatting with, but also helps us get a perspective from somebody who knows the space better. And then it just goes back to, I hate to say it, but a little bit of gut feel, right? Like, do you really believe this is a team and in a market that can be successful? And it's back to the question of talent and work, and it's probably a little bit of both. I don't think anybody can properly answer that question, especially at seed. But it's not easy, right? And what I will say is that I have been on both extremes of sides, coming from corporate healthcare investing, where not only did we only do digital health, but we also were investing only in digital health that had a strategical relevance to the insurance payer, and in which case they can pilot with each other and help each other. But the sectors were very narrow, and so there was a very limited set of types of companies that we would speak to.
Sure.
As a result, you become an expert, right? And so you hopefully go into most calls after you get some reps, understanding spaces pretty well and really understanding where they fit on the stack. And that's fun because it's fun to go in and not feel like an idiot. Now at Layer Hippo, I went to the exact opposite.
You did, yes. Yeah.
And now I do anything and everything, basically. I mean, you mentioned some of our portfolio companies. We've done anything from sunglasses all the way to deep tech and traditional B2B SaaS and so on.
But the common thread is that the founders are exceptional, world-class. Like, you could leave them on a desert island and come back a month later and they would be the king of that tribe, and they would have a huge mansion built out of sticks and stones, and they'd figure it out.
How do you find someone that kind of gives you a little bit of a smirk because you just think to yourself, this person is a little bit sick in the head?
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had founders even recently in our portfolio turn down pretty lucrative offers to buy their companies where they would end up with life-changing amounts of money.
Yeah.
And apparently they turned it down immediately, right? Yeah. To me, that's like, whoa, that is somebody who's a little bit crazy about being locked into their company. And again, it's an art, not a science. How do we find those people? It's hard to say, and we will miss.
It's the true test, really, the exit decline, because, like, in order for this to work for you guys, the exit needs to be really, really big. Most founders will settle along that journey before it gets to the point where it's lucrative enough. And you really need to find, and everyone's going to tell you, well, a lot of people will tell you, oh yeah, like, I'm going IPO, I'm going all the way, or like you know, this is a hill I die on. And then their first acquisition offer, they accept.
Right.
And it's fine. Like, everyone's got their own situation, and like, this is certainly not me you know, talking down on anybody. Like, if you can build a business and exit, like, fantastic, that's incredible. But ultimately, you're looking for people that are crazy enough to want to change the world and leave a dint in the universe and revolutionize an industry and disrupt it in a way where it completely transforms and you build the category leader. To do that, it's a different mindset than I'm in this for a quick buck.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I will admit there have been times where I've heard about the offers and been like, I would have taken that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I fully get it. Yeah.
Definitely no disrespect to folks who have taken their but that's just one example of a trait where we can feel like this person is really built just for that long run, home run swing.
Yeah.
And that's simply because of the fund model, right? Of course, it would be nice to just invest in a bunch of companies that we think could 3 or 4x and make some money and move on to the next thing. But unfortunately, the nature of our industry is it's too much of a high risk at the early stage to not have to underwrite to really large exits.
When you're looking into the founder's eyes and you're trying to determine if they are Steve Jobs versus, I don't know, just
pick someone.
Sam Bankman-Fried, maybe. I think I'm pretty safe criticizing him. I don't think anyone's really on the SBF side. So like when you're like looking, like, you know, it's intelligence, it's hunger, it's ambition, it's humility, it's healthy ego. Like, you need to be a little bit like delusional to think you can do this. Otherwise, you'll go up against somebody that is, and then they'll probably beat you, right? It's the ability to to be the first person in the office and the last person to leave and not give a shit that anyone knows that. You're doing it for you. You're not doing it because other people are watching you. Like, the success is what you get rewarded for in public. It's the years of pain that you went through in private. I think Elon says it's like eating glass and staring into the dark abyss. And it sounds terrible, but that's what building a company is most of the time. It's not being on the cover of Forbes. It's not, speaking at TED. That's like 0.01% of what happens. Most of the time you are chasing customers, trying to get your first money. You are iterating while pulling your hair out, trying to find PMF. It's convincing a co-founder who is thinking about leaving. Like, most of the time the job sucks. Like, so to find people that are willing, that are excited to do that with a smile on their face, and they might have done it before, failed, and are willing to go again. Like, it's just a maniacal personality, which most people don't have, and that's fine. Like, the world would be a very strange place if everybody was like that. But your job is to find the unicorns versus the horses with a stick stuck to their face, basically.
There are so many business owners that I know that don't fall into the kind of software venture-backed type of approach that have done really well and still maintain work-life balance, good family life, etc. And actually, by the way, I hope that AI creates an environment where there can be more independence and more business owners that can run businesses on the side, because you'll have agents be able to take care of a lot of the logistical work for you. It's just different, as you said. It's not that it's better or worse. It's just, but if you do want to build a generational venture-backed company, you have to, it's just the reality. You have to be able to flexibly throw away some of the interest in true work-life balance and things like that. And I just think that the people who criticize that idea maybe haven't been in that environment before, or haven't worked with founders in that environment. And I think the key point, though, is, as you said, it has to come from the founder, right? And I think at Letter Hippo, for example, as a VC firm, we pride ourselves on still, I think we're all very healthy and happy and excited to get to work today. But we all, I think, do strive to work very hard, and a lot of it is led by our managing partners, who we all look up to and frankly want to be like. Yes. And I think that creates an environment where you can't not work at that level of capacity, right? And so I think where trouble starts at the startup is where the founding team does not live up to the work ethic that they expect of their employees. And so again, thankfully, I don't relate to that, because I certainly feel like I want to follow the path of everybody at my firm, and then I think most of our portfolio companies hopefully have created an environment where their employees also want to aspire to work at the level of their founders.
Yeah, I mean, the leaders, they set the operating rhythm at the end of the day, and if they're doing this and you're down here, like, it's just not going to long term work out. Like, logically speaking, you should be like leading from the front, and your team should be inspired to emulate what you do. Do what you do, not what you say at the end of the day. And that's something that very few people, everyone says it, but very few people actually do it.
Definitely.
In my opinion. This has been super useful. We dug so much deeper into what it means to be a founder, what it means to be an investor, and advice for everybody on that path. If people have enjoyed this, they want to learn more about you, about the fund, what's like the one place they should go right now?
Shoot me an email, Maurice@letterhippo.com, and find a way. Please find a way.
Be creative.
To show me that there is a reason you're reaching out, or that you heard this podcast or something like that, because it's hard to sift through the automated emails. And but I would love to chat with anybody who got anything out of this.
Put like a poker playing card emoji in the message, because then like that someone's listened to the end. So if you receive that,
then I'll know, and happy to play sometimes as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Alfie.
Thank you so much for watching. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Introducing Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter. She's an AI agent who works 24/7, screening candidates on autopilot, conducting interviews in 30 different languages, uploading all the best candidates to your applicant tracking system, hire 10 times faster at 90% lower cost, and significantly improve the candidate experience. Visit welovealpha.com to start your free trial now.